think a good transition time. We're going to bring Charlie in to talk about the flamethrower.
Okay.
Let y'all have a chit chat on the actual equipment that you use there on Iwo Jima and Uncle Long.
Okay.
All right, Matt, you know what, Matt? I was gonna say, it don't matter. I was gonna say stay there, but that's cool.
Nah. I think probably too distracting.
If you wanna take the GoPro, I'm sorry, to go for it.
And then just kind of work.
Finally, we get a chance to sit and talk.
Okay, Charlie.
So, you were telling Matt about when the first flamethrowers came, and those were probably ER1s, experimental research ones.
I think they were A1.
They were in just a regular unpainted wooden box.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would have been.
It was a tall box because, you know, probably stood something like 4 feet tall or something like that.
Yeah, because they sat them upright, and the
Yeah.
guns.
Yeah.
Well, this is the later. This is the one for shipping, and obviously these are reusable. So that would have been pretty close to what you had, right?
Yeah, it seems like the air control nozzle was different.
On the top. Up here?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the E1R1.
okay.
Then, this is the standardized one, and then the valve's down here now because you couldn't turn yours on.
That's
You had to
right.
have a partner do it.
Yeah.
So they moved it to down here. Wow, what was that on Bougainville?
No, I never got to Bougainville.
Where
No.
did you first get the flamethrower?
Guadalcanal.
Oh.
January 44th is when the flamethrowers arrived on Guadalcanal.
All right. Yeah, they didn't tell you any history about it?
I'd never seen one like that.
Really?
No.
What did you have? You had this guy?
Yeah,
I'll be damned.
right, there, that one. Yeah, I'd never seen that thing.
That baffles me. That truly baffled me. Because these really were a piece of junk. So, you never had an M1 on Guadalcanal. You didn't use those at all. They recorded that they got there, but they stayed on the beach. They never used them. Did you get to use one?
On Guadalcanal?
Yeah.
We practiced with them. Oh, yeah. When we first got them, all we had was this powder
Yeah.
to mix with gasoline.
Yep. Steric acid and palm oil.
Yeah, well, the gunnery sergeant we had, old China Marine, Albert Daniel Hemphill. You know, wonder how come some of these names can never get away from me, because Albert Daniel Hemphill was the toughest Marine I have ever seen in my life, and the meanest Marine I think I've ever served under. And he was about 6'2", and he had some very unusual characteristics, but his principal characteristic was he was in Peking, China,
Right.
and he and 2 other Marines went out for a weekend pass and drinking, and he passed out. So now the 2 Marines are dragging him back to camp. They've got his arms around her shoulder, you know, and taking him back to camp, and he's plumb out of it. They're passing this tattoo place, and they were also pretty well looped up, and one of them said to the other, "Let's take him in there and get him a tattoo." So they did, took him in, laid him down on a table, and took his shirt off, and that time they used absolute needles, you know. And they selected a majorette with the tassels on the boots, the big hat, the baton, everything, just like a majorette. And when they got done with him, from right here, each shoulder, right at the edge of each shoulder, all the way to his belly button, he's a big man, you know, a lot of territory, and they put that majorette. Covered his whole body. And course, when he came to us on Guam,
Uh-huh.
we'd never seen him before, but he transferred in. Now he's our gunnery sergeant. I mean, I said Guam. I mean Guadalcanal. He would occasionally still drink some on the weekends, and if he drank enough, you could talk him into getting out in the area between the tents
Yeah.
and take his shirt off and make this margarette march. It was the funniest thing. I can remember that so well. She looked like she was moving. But when we got these and we mixed that powder with gasoline,
Right.
we went out into the field to try it out, to shoot. Well, no instructions with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely none.
That was common.
So we picked something, a log or a tree or something to shoot at. And so when you're shooting it from here,
Right.
and you got one stream going out,
Right.
like a water stream. And by the time you got on target, you only had 72 seconds of stuff.
Yep.
You're out. And maybe you never get on target. So he wasn't happy with that. He just didn't, he didn't think it was effective. So we began experimenting. I don't remember the order now, it's been too many years ago. But we tried motor oil, and it was too thick. We
With
couldn't
light?
get any distance out of it.
Yeah.
And so then we tried kerosene, and kerosene didn't have any heat to it. And then we finally got the diesel and airplane, or 82 octane gasoline.
Right. A mix.
I mixed it. And you could get a big ball of flame out of it. If you shot it into the air like you would shoot a rifle, you better make sure that the wind is not blowing towards you. I made that mistake a couple times and lost all the hair off my arms and my eyebrows, and I only did it a couple times, but he was not happy with the heat that it was producing, gas, because one day he left camp. He had access to a Jeep. He left camp, didn't tell anybody where he was going or when he'd be back. But when he came back, he had a 55-gallon drum barrel in the back end of that Jeep with 130 octane airplane gasoline.
Yeah.
And we began mixing that with diesel fuel. And we changed portions until he was satisfied with what we were getting. And at the same time, he told us, do not fire into the air. Air resistance is going to stop your flame. Fire it on the ground 15, 20 yards in front of you. Let it roll as a big orange ball.
Yeah.
And then you can get about 30 yards out of it. So that's what we did from that on.
Yeah, we discovered the same thing in the movie industry.
Yeah.
Once you get the target, just hit in front of it and then just roll it in.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Worked really
We had
well.
about 40 of those in the company supply.
Yeah. But you never had the long gun. You always had this gun,
That's
right?
right. And we filled them from here.
Yeah.
Where do you fill that one from? Just one tank?
Just the one. This was. I'll tell you quickly. It was what they called the 90-day wonder, and because the Chemical Corps didn't want to do it, they were busy with gas mask, airplane napalm. They claimed flamethrowers didn't work, but infantry Marines really wanted a flamethrower.
Right.
So it was Secretary of Stinson that finally went to Chemical Corps and said, "Get us a flamethrower." That's their orders from the Secretary of War. They made one phone call to Kincaid Fire Extinguisher in Brooklyn and said, "Build us a flamethrower."
Okay.
No specifications, no nothing. So these are two halves of the standard soda bottles, and you can see the welding and everything is just junk.
Yeah.
Let me get a little tab of metal, a piece of junk. This was a oxygen bottle, medical. All this stuff was airplane ignition, the little, yeah, this one hasn't got it in, too bad. there's a little airplane ignition and batteries, and you press a little button, and this is hydrogen from a laboratory or college class, you know, experimentation, and just piece of junk.
You are right.
But the Marine Corps needed the flamethrower so bad that they took it. And of course, time went on, they got modifications and different stuff. But you got it before they even had the shipping crate for it. So the one you worked with is this guy. And there's a long story to this. Tell you what, man, yeah, let's do it the easy way. Two-man carry.
Yep.
Yeah, let's open it towards Woody, and then you can bring
I
the
could bring a
wheel
camera.
around Woody's side and show it. So, interestingly, that box, that's, you see the asphalt paper seal? This came completely waterproof, even the box. And this guy, here, you know more about it than I do. You fired it more than I have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always keep one fired to test with. Now this is what people, and I'll show you a picture later, but this is all you had to do, right?
That's right.
Now the interesting thing is this is winding itself. There's tabs, and the unfired cartridges have a little pin sticking out.
Yeah.
So they catch on this, which doesn't move the pin forward and allow it to rotate until you do this.
Right. Yeah.
So, and these, it's incredibly waterproof.
Yeah, after 5 shots, you had to unscrew this thing, and we had to carry extra of these in our pack,
Yep,
you know, because you only got 5 shots in here.
yep.
And we were,
Here you go, Matt. Come right over. See? It lights it and it rotates it. Of course, I hope there's no live one in there.
I'm gonna be having a haircut like Woody.
And then, I've burned my hands many times. And when you're done,
that's right.
and you didn't want to touch that after you fired it.
No,
Did you get burned?
Right.
I got burned.
We carried extras in our pack and in our pocket,
Yeah.
because we finally learned to conserve fuel. We would fire 2 to 3 4-second bursts,
Right.
and that meant out of 72 seconds, you could get a great number of bursts,
Right.
and it was a great big orange fireball. So you could get a lot of service out of one tank.
Yeah. How many was your max?
Huh?
How many firings maximum could you get out of one tank?
I don't know if we ever tested that. I don't know. I can't answer that.
Sideline, Minutemen are still around.
Yeah. But once you do 5, then you gotta take this thing off,
Right.
put another cylinder on,
Right.
you know.
Unless your targets were spaced next to each other. And then you could get one target, stop, another target. They told us it was 11 seconds on each match, but I don't.
They told us 10 seconds.
Yeah, and to tell you the truth, I saw a lot of 8s
did
and
ya?
7s, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they were reliable. If it was hot, it would burn faster. The next one would burn faster. But in New Hampshire, we burned 7 cars with one load. And that was a lot of fun because the cameraman stopped, one of the cameramen stopped at 5.
Yeah.
And I kept going and he had to turn around and reload. And it was a lot of fun. But yeah, that was the big trick. You could get a lot.
When we first got it, there was a lot of concern of whether that thing would explode or not on your back. And we set it out in the field, out in the boonies, and shot at it with M1 rifles and 30 caliber machine guns, ready to see if that was shooting at the tanks,
Yeah.
and it would just ricochet off. But but the thing that would happen was the hose.
Oh, it's still in the box.
Okay, we could cut the hose into.
Yeah,
Yeah, with a machine gun, you cut the hose into.
yeah. This is actually
Yeah,
World
that's
War
it.
II, and you can tell
Yeah.
because of the brass.
Yeah.
But this one's
Now
a
there's
good one.
a spring in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's an anti-shrapnel wire mesh under the first layer.
Right.
So this is a abrasive layer. And when you hydro test, of course, you include this, and it's not even affected. These are good for 600 PSI easily. Yeah. Did you ever do the gauge in the top of the tank to find out what your regulator was putting out? No?
No.
You're supposed to.
As long as it worked.
It was in the manual too. It showed how to adjust it and everything. Yeah, who cares?
No.
Yeah. So, but you never got these boxes, huh?
I never saw that box.
That's too bad, because they even got a repair kit, a tool kit, a little box that holds 3 cans of igniters.
Nope,
For
I
those
never
that
saw
don't,
that before.
Yeah. Yeah, let's pull it out. It's the same as that guy anyway. What kind of problem did you have though? What did you see in service on this? What kind of problems did you have?
The main problem was with the hose. Every once in a while, I remember the hose leaking. Now, I don't know why it leaked.
The big problem we found was you leave the plug in and the plug would compress that O-ring that's in there. And I don't dare open this now. I don't want to get fuel anywhere. But the plug actually compresses that O-ring.
Yeah.
So if you now go to connect the hose, that O-ring may be compressed. And it's not a very good seal.
Okay.
And that's most of the leaks.
That's where I remember the leak.
Yeah, and there was actually an incident right up during training. Somebody was just, can't tell you what base. I know the other accident.
Yeah.
But there was a general they were demonstrating it for, and it sprayed him and caught him on fire.
Now,
And
this
that was the end of that one.
This was the type handle we had.
Yep, yep,
Yeah. Yeah.
yep. In fact, this
Reach
one
back
probably,
around, open it up.
you hear it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The, the thing I tell people is this is what, 70-some years old? And it still works.
Yeah.
As long as you keep them from rusting internally, and as long as you replace that check valve, this quick connect, and there's a Bakelite seat in here you need to replace with nylon, current nylon. As long as you do that and it doesn't rust internally, I think these are Hydro now telling us we got another 100 years at least. Oh, these things are, we went from the biggest piece of junk off the shelf built by a fire extinguisher company to National Research Defense Council. By the way, you know what this nozzle? So we went from the worst flamethrower ever built to the best. Do you know what that nozzle cost? MIT, 1943, $100,000 to design that nozzle.
Holy cow.
MIT. So we went from the worst flamethrower ever built to one that was way, way, way far ahead of everybody.
Wow.
Just, in fact, if you had used the M1, you'd realize nozzle dribble, barrel dribble, where when you fire, because you're closing back here, all this oil down on the ground and probably going to light if you try to fire again. With this, it closes the nozzle. There's no barrel drip or anything.
Right, yeah.
These are great, great design, but how much research went into this and how much money was spent. Columbia did the fuel mix. You remember how your fuel sometimes would pick up water and sometimes it would turn gooey and sometimes it wouldn't and unreliable? Well,
And, as far as I remember, we didn't have that, maybe it was the heat. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I can't remember of any malfunction. I don't remember any malfunction at all.
Yeah, these are pretty reliable. If anything doesn't work, it's because it wasn't serviced.
What are you going to use tomorrow?
This guy and that guy.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're gonna be there. Good.
Yeah, tomorrow morning.
Good,
Yeah.
good. I'd like you to train Matt.
Now I'm gonna fire one Saturday. Is that this one?
What I'd like to do is we'd like to get you in the LVT, the alligator.
What?
The alligator, the swimming tank. Tom Price's alligator.
Get me in an alligator? No, I don't think so.
The swimming tank.
Huh?
The swimming tank.
I don't think so. No, my time is going to be limited tomorrow because I got to leave at 1:30
Yep.
to go to talk to a bunch of jarheads.
Yeah.
National
yeah.
Association of Marine Corps League.
Yep. I met him. No, I haven't met him. It was at Lest We Forget. So what's your vision? Because this is 86 pounds. You're going to put that in your bag?
Yeah.
Are you sure? All right, where were we? So you didn't have any maintenance problems with these guys. They were reliable.
No, other than that leak occasionally. And it wasn't bad.
Where they leak, the hose? Yeah, the hose leak. Yeah, one thing we did is we took 2 or 3 of these O-rings, a hose to a couple of quick connects, and tied them on with a little piece of cord onto the bottom of the frame, usually right here, so you could see you got it. And if you got out there and it leaked, you just simply pull the one out, throw it away, put another one in.
You see the end of your strap that's around your waist.
The guys don't seem to like them. Did you use them? Because you could use one up here, and you could connect one down there.
We used them, but we're crawling mostly, but every once in a while you would jump up and have to run someplace.
Yeah.
So you needed those both hooked, otherwise that thing's slapping you in the back. Yeah. But
I'll be damned.
it seemed to me like we had a different kind of a quick connect or something. Man, that's been 70-some years ago.
Yeah, these are the only ones I've ever seen because they basically you just pop that and you can drop the thing really fast.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
But it seemed to me like it was even quicker than that, huh?
No, the chest
Maybe that
straps.
was it.
The chest straps were the problem because they used that snap type helmet hook.
Oh,
I should have brought one. I didn't
Yeah.
think to bring one.
that may have been what we had.
Yeah.
One
Plus,
of
if these rotted, then you just improvised. Yeah, these are one of the items that didn't come in the repair kit.
one of the things that has bothered me over the years, and I don't have an answer, I've talked to psychologists and sociologists, and
A lot of ologists.
I haven't talked to a psychiatrist. Maybe I should have started there. I don't know. But some things are so vivid, they never go away.
Right.
Other things you'd like to remember, but you can't.
Hmm.
And I've looked for that answer. I have some I don't want to remember, and I'd like to get those out of my mind.
Hmm.
The ones that I want to remember is how did it happen? I can remember as soon as we selected the 4 individuals to assist me.
Right.
2 of those guys had been in the squad I was in before we formed this special weapons unit, where they taught us not only to operate the flamethrower, but also demolition. Because the theory was that once you burned a cave out, or
Right.
put flame in a cave, or a pillbox, that you needed to put an explosive in there to make sure nobody survived. And on Guam, we never used the flamethrower. I carried it for the first day or so, and we're trying to climb to the first ridge line, which took us 5 days, because they were on the ridge line, and we're trying to crawl toward them.
Right.
So they've got all the advantage. And Guam was so much coral rock, they couldn't dig caves. They didn't have any caves on Guam. So the flamethrower became useless. They had a few pillboxes right on the beach,
Right.
but those were knocked out by artillery and
Naval
naval
yeah.
stuff. So they were gone by the time we got there, you know. So after carrying that thing a couple of days, we just put it back in supply because no use for it. And once we got over the first ridge that they call Nimitz Ridge today, we hit jungle. Well, you couldn't use this thing in jungle. It was so thick. Some places we had to have machetes to cut our way through the jungle.
Yeah.
So if you use this thing in the jungle, you just set the jungle on fire, you know. So never used it. Never had it on after the first couple of days. And then when we got to Iwo Jima, with all the caves and 200 pillboxes that they had on the island, that was the most effective weapon of getting the enemy in a pillbox.
Right.
Because when they built the pillboxes, they made them so that they were kind of like in a pod. One or the other pillboxes could see the other pillbox.
Mutually supported.
Yeah, so you'd have a crossfire.
Right.
And the back entrance to the pillbox was in the back.
Right.
Some of those they sealed with the Japanese in there. They couldn't get out. They wanted to stay in there. And and some of them were small, like maybe 1 or 2 men, and then there were others that were large enough that you could have 12, 15 people in the pillbox. And the first pillbox that I'll back up a moment. When I got the 4 Marines that were to assist me, I put 2 to my right and left because I wanted them to have a crossfire to the pillbox that I'm going to approach. And the first pillbox that was on the right flank of this string of pillboxes was big. It was a big pillbox. They had piled sand up on top of each of the pillboxes, rather deep, so that if a piece of artillery came in or a mortar, it never touched the pillbox. It hit the sand, but it never reached the pillbox. Now, the naval gunfire from the ocean, they could see the face of the pillbox. So if they can hit the face of the pillbox from the ocean, then they knocked out some of the fronts of those pillboxes. We've all seen those on TV, where you got these rods all sticking in all kinds of directions.
Yeah.
Well, they had put a lot of rods in those pillboxes. Bazooka wouldn't even touch them. It just bounced off of the thing. And so the first when I'm getting ready to go, when I signed those 4 individuals, we had what we called a position, pole charge man. I think we made it up. Really, I do. I mean, I don't know where it came from, but before we left Guam, before we left Canal and Guam, we took 2x2 piece of wood about 8 feet long, put a 12-inch board on it, nailed it on the board, on the 2x2. Then we would strap explosive on the board. And what we use as duct tape today, we didn't call it duct tape, we just called it tape, I think, but we'd take tape and wrap that around that board and fasten those explosives on the board. And we were using first TNT, quarter-pound blocks. Very difficult to keep it on there because you had to put a lot of tape on it so they wouldn't come off. Then later on they brought us composition C2 blocks, and there were 8 to a package, 8 to a satchel. And we could tape those quarter-pound blocks on it. And it was almost like putty. Very explosive, but you could work it up if you wanted to work it up and make a string out of it or something. So you cut a tree down or blow the lid out of a 55-gallon drum or something of that nature, you could do that. You know? So we had this pole charge man, and we'd made up a number of these pole chargers that we kept in supply unit. And one of my squad buddies, his name was Schlager, when we were getting ready to move out, I said to Schlager, "You're my pole charge man, so get a pole charge." So he went, got a pole charge. Now he's to follow me. Wherever I'm going, he's supposed to be right behind me. So that when I burn something out, cave or pillbox, he's to run in, stick the explosive in whatever, pull the fuse lighter and set it off. You know, that was his job.
And then run.
Then run, that's right. Well, we get out to the first, near the first pillbox, and we get down into a shell crater. Because I got down in there with him because I wanted to tell him what we're going to do. At that point, I hadn't told him what we're going to do. So we got down in that shell crater, and I told him that we're going to crawl up over the side, stay on your belly, and crawl to that first pillbox. You know. And bring pole charge, of course. He's supposed to carry that pole charge with him. So I crawl up out, and I'm crawling forward, and whatever caused him to do it, I don't know. Probably fear. I have no idea. But when he came up out of the hole, instead of staying on his belly like he should, he was hunched over, carrying his pole charge, you know. And a bullet hit him right there. And penetrated his helmet, hit the liner, and went around the liner to the back of the head, and when it did, the bullet was coming in from this angle, it threw him back in the hole that he just crawled out of. And I didn't see it, I heard it. I heard this smack. And I looked around and he wasn't there. So I crawled back in the hole again. I just crawfished back in the hole. And when I got back in the hole, he's laying there, and he's pretty well out of it, but at least he's alive.
Wow.
And so I just left him. He's done. I had to evacuate him, but they did that later. But anyway, I went on about my job. I didn't have a pole charge man after that. Never did have. And but I didn't have time to get pole charge people or anything else. So I'm trying to approach this pillbox, crawling up kind of a ditch toward the pillbox. And they're shooting at me with a Nambu. And I can feel the bullets ripping off my flamethrower. Fortunately, they ricocheted. When they hit, they went up and out instead of down. And I decided, apparently, I'm not going to crawl more toward that Nambu, so I crawled off to the right, and I can see this wee little bit of blue smoke coming out of the top of this pillbox. And it was apparently the smoke from rifles and the Nambu that they were firing. And when they piled the sand up on the top, it was sloped in the back of, on the back of the pillbox. So I could crawl up that sand slope to get on top of the pillbox. And I did, and when I got up there, there was a pipe.
Oh,
That was their air pipe or
air
breathing pipe.
Yeah.
To let they lived in that thing. They cooked with charcoal and in the pillbox, and that was the way that smoke could disperse itself. And I saw this hole, pipe about that big around, so I just walked over and took the nozzle of the flamethrower and stuck it down that pipe and pulled the trigger. And of course, some of the Marines later, I had no idea, but some of the Marines later reported when we got back to Guam that there were 17 in that pillbox. I have no idea. But the thing that's bothered me all my life is how did I get the extra flamethrowers? Now the citation says, and these are words of other Marines, not me, because nobody ever came to me and said, "What'd you do?" Nobody ever questioned me as to what I did, except one Marine Corps reporter. And he got so screwed up and misinformation that I've never been happy with him since. But nobody nobody came to me and said, "What do you want in this write-up? You know, in this citation?" I didn't even know what was going on. The first clue that I had that something was going on, I'm sitting in my tent one day, and we still had, back on Guam, TNT blocks, quarter-pound blocks. I kept a box of quarter-pound block of TT under my bunk all the time. Because here again we're dealing with coral rock. You couldn't dig a hole with a mattock and a shovel.
Mm-hmm.
So I would take quarter-pound blocks, and they came in a real heavy box, like wooden box, real put together, very solid.
Yep.
And I'd take a quarter-pound block, drop it down in the empty box, and I had the axle of a Jeep, rear axle of a Jeep. They had a head on it about that big around with cogs on it, you know, that run the differential.
Right.
And I had taken it to maintenance and had them sharpen it, put a point on it, real sharp point. But I could take the cog itself, drop a quarter-pound block in that box, and I would sit there and crush up that TNT, pulverize it, make it into a powder. And then I could take the other end of it. Of course, I'm having other Marines handle the 12-pound sledgehammer. All I'm doing is supervising. But I'd take that thing and the pointed, and we'd drive a hole in the coral rock, and with a 12-pound sledgehammer, and we just keep digging holes all the way around, whatever size pit we wanted. And then we'd go across the other way, and I'd take that powder and just put some TNT in each powder hole, or each hole. And then I'd put a primer cord down in there, not a fuse, just a primer cord. Then I'd set it off, and it went off all at the same time. It'd just go poof,
Yep.
and that would loosen the coral, so we could dig it out and make garbage pits and heads, and otherwise we couldn't dig a head. You know. So the TNT was still real handy, and I was sitting there breaking up this TNT that day, and some guy stuck his head in the door, in the opening of the tent, said, "Is there Williams in here?" And I'm sitting right beside the door, and I said, "Yeah, I'm Williams." And he said, "Well, I just typed up something that says you're to get a medal." I said, what is it? And he said, I don't know. And he said, I'm from Salem, West Virginia, which is not too far from where I grew up. Then he was gone. He was a clerk in regiment. I found out later. And he's the guy that typed up the first rendition of the citation. And I thought it was for the Purple Heart, because I hadn't received my Purple Heart yet. When he said medal, I associated with that, and I thought, well, that's what that is. Okay. I forgot it. Mm-hmm. Eventually, they called us all out together, and the captain gave everybody their Purple Hearts all at one time. As far as I'm concerned, that's it. Yeah. So nothing else happened. Nobody told me anything or what was going on until I get this call, and right after the bomb in September, from the first sergeant's office. He sent a runner to the tent and said, come to his office. I went up and he said, we had one set of khakis, that's dungarees otherwise. We had to get our khakis out every Friday evening or afternoon and iron them so we would have them ready for inspection on Saturday morning. We had an inspection every Saturday morning. And we had a table built around the tent pole, and we had an iron. Each tent had an iron. So we could take the light bulb out, hook the iron in, and iron our khaki so we'd look like Marines on Saturday morning. And first sergeant said, go back to your tent, get your khaki ironed. You're going to the general's tent. And I said, what for? He said, hell, I don't know. They didn't tell him, they just told him what he was telling me. So I went back, got my khaki out of my sea bag, that's all we had was a sea bag, and put it on the table and ironed out all the wrinkles. Put my tie on, and cover, and went back to the first sergeant's office. And when I got there was a Jeep sitting there with a Marine driver, and he said, that's the Jeep going to take you to the general's tent. And I still didn't know why I was going. I tried to think, what did I do that would require me, I'm apparently going to be court-martialed or something, but you don't go to the general's tent as a corporal. That's something, you know, you just don't walk up and say, I want to see the general. You don't do that, you know. And so, got a Jeep, went to the general's tent, and I had never even seen the general's tent. In fact, I'd only seen him a few times when he was either doing an inspection or having a function of some kind. And when I got out, here stood the colonel, his aide. And he told me what to do. He said, take your cover off, hold it in your right hand, make sure the emblem shows, and walk in the tent and walk up to his desk and stand at attention until he tells you what to do. He had a door on his tent. We didn't have any door on our tent. Yeah. Of course, we weren't a two-star general either, but I walked in, stood before his desk, and he told me to stand at ease. And then he began saying things. And one of the things that he said was, you're going back to the States, you're going to Washington. If he used the words Medal of Honor, it didn't mean a thing in the world. I'd never heard of it. I didn't know it existed.
It didn't register.
No. I didn't know. I'd never seen one, never heard of it. I knew nothing. You know, it's total new word to me, I guess. But if he mentioned it, I don't have no memory of it at all. Of course, the fact that he said, you're going to go home or back to the States, that's all that registered with me. I've been over 2.5 years. I'm ready to go back to the States. And he could have said anything else, would not have had the same impact, you know. So when he finished talking, he had a big yellow envelope on his desk, about 10 inches long, about 6 inches wide, yellow. And he handed me that envelope and said, "These are your orders and you're excused." So I did about face and walked back outside. And when I got outside, the colonel was still standing there. And he said, "That envelope, you'll notice or you'll see on the back a seal." Well, I hadn't even had a chance to look at it. All I had it was in my hand, you know. And I had it in my right hand, because I still got my cover in my left hand. You know? Right. So I looked at the back of that envelope, and where the envelope comes together, there was a piece of wax about 50-cent size. And in there was a block letter, E. Just a block letter, E. And the colonel said, "Do not break that seal. It's a court-martial offense." I didn't know why. So, got back in the Jeep, took me back to the first sergeant's hut or tent, and he told me, "Get your sea bag ready. Pack your sea bag, bring it here, we'll ship it. But you're going to go to the airport and get on an airplane." I'd never been to the airport. And it wasn't paved, it was still dirt. The airport was still dirt. So they put me in a Jeep, took me down to the airport, and when I got there, there was a little wooden building built. The guy that was running the airport, who was a Marine, I walked in there and told him I was supposed to catch an airplane. And he said, "Have a seat over there. There's a bench." I walked over and sat down on the bench. This is a little before noon. No chow. I sat there about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Nobody had said anything to me. And finally I walked back up to this sergeant running the desk, and I said, "Would you call my first sergeant for me?" And I told him, C Company, first bat, first sergeant. So he got him on the phone, and I said, "We never did call this guy to his face hose nose." He had a great big nose. So when we were talking about him away from him, we'd say, "Hose nose said do this," you know. But I said, "First Sergeant, I'm still down here and nobody has told me what I'm supposed to do. And I have no plane." He said, "I'll send a Jeep after you." So he sent a Jeep back, picked me up till we back camp. And I stayed overnight. And the next morning, put me back in the Jeep and sent me back again to the airport. That time, there was a
hose nose.
get in on an airplane. Yeah.
So then what happened? You got back to the airport.
Yeah. Got on an airplane that flew to Johnson Island where we refueled, and then on to Hawaii. And when I got to Hawaii, I turned that envelope in to Marine Corps headquarters.
You still didn't know, why am I going home?
No, I still don't know. Yeah. And of course, he had told me that I'm due at Marine Corps headquarters on October the 3rd. But other than that, the time frame, up until then, I'm in travel status. And so when I got to Hawaii, I went back to I went to the first sergeant's office, turned my orders in, and they broke the seal and opened the envelope there. Then they had to write new orders to put me on a different airplane to send me to Frisco. And while we were on Guam, even up until the time that we left, even though the war was supposedly over, we were not allowed to smoke outside the tent. You couldn't flick your Zippo outside the tent. At night, total blackout. Because washing machine Charlie was still flying around, you know, even though the war was over. We didn't know what the heck Charlie was going to do, so they just kept the blackout. But at Hawaii, everything was lit up. Bright lights everywhere. And they told me, the first sergeant there told me that there are 3 priorities. The prisoners of war have first priority. Generals, 2-star or anyway, generals with stars have second priority. And then the rest of us have a third priority for a seat on an airplane. There were very few passenger airplanes at that time because everything had been turned into fighters or bomber or something, you know. So the first sergeant told me that he didn't know how long it might be before they get me a seat. And they sent me out to a Navy base to sleep and eat because there was no place in Marine Corps headquarters for that. And so they took me to this Navy base. As far as I know, I'm the only Marine on that base. I go to chow 3 times a day, come back into the little hut that they had, and that went on for either 6 or 7 days. And nobody had said anything to me. Of course, they didn't even know why I was there.
Yeah.
But I did have a ticket that authorized me to eat chow there. You know, I could go to the chow hall with my ticket. But I'm standing out in front of this little hut, and I see a 6-by Marine truck coming down the street. And I ran out in the middle of the street and started waving my arms, and right in the middle of the street, he'd had to run over me because I was not going to move, and he stopped. And I remember in the left side of the window, it said, "No passengers." But I don't know what that meant at the time, but I learned later that that meant he couldn't have passengers up front with him.
Ah.
You know, the driver cannot have somebody that's interfering with his driving ability. So I said, "Are you going downtown Hawaii?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Can I go with you? Can I have a ride?" And he said, "Yeah, get in the back." So I got in the back, and he let me off right close to the first sergeant's office. And I went in and walked up to this same little PFC that was typing when I first got there. And I said to him, "I want to see the first sergeant." And he jumped up, ran back around the corner in the building, and a few moments the first sergeant came out, started down the hall and yelled at me, "What in the hell are you doing here?" And I said, "First sergeant, that's what I want to know." I'm a corporal. I'm a corporal. But anyway, he said, "Well, we'll see if we can find you a seat on an airplane." He took me to the airport, put me in a waiting room, and he said, "Don't you leave this room. You stay right here." Well, that was late in the evening, and about 2 o'clock the next morning, he came charging through the door and said, "I got your seat." So we go out, and here's this huge airplane. I'd seen B-29s go by and seen them on the parking, you know, on the airport, but this was built different. You know, it was a passenger plane, and I'd never seen anything like that. Had steps going up to it.
Yeah.
All lit up, lights all shining and all that. So I could hear a noise inside. I walked up those steps and stepped inside, and there were 49 prisoners of war that had just been picked up at Japan on their way back to the States, and they were on this plane, and they were celebrating. They didn't have any booze. They wouldn't give them any beer or whiskey, but food, you know, and drinks and stuff like that. I have said many times, that was the happiest group of people I've ever seen in my life.
They would be.
But they looked like skeletons. Their eyes were
Yeah.
sunken in, their cheeks were sunken in. You could see the ribs or the bones in their body, because they just had a thin shirt on. And, but they were having really a good time. And
Better food.
yeah, well, my seat was the right front seat, right next to the motor. And finally, the pilots said, take your seats, we're ready to take off. There were no seat belts back in those days, of course. So I was already sitting in my seat. So everybody took their seats, and this tall, thin prisoners of war, American, walked up and sat down in the seat beside me. And we took off. And of course, that motor on the right side was so loud you couldn't even hear yourself think. But finally, we got airborne and smoothed out, and it got quieter. And I began talking to him about, I didn't even know we had prisoners of war. I didn't know that. Nobody ever told me. And so I was asking all kinds of questions about what they feed you, what you work at. And he told me that he was, they got one soup of a morning. Then they went into a coal mine, down into a coal mine to dig coal. And they got one soup at noon, one bowl of soup at noon. And they worked 12 hours. And then they would go back to their little hut that they had a bin in, you know, just one-man huts. And and he said, if you got so emaciated and weak and you couldn't get out of the mine and you fell on the way, that's where you stayed forever. They just killed you. Because you're no more use to them. You can't dig coal, they don't want you.
Yeah.
Yeah. He said, fortunately, I was always able to, you know, get back out. And he said, one thing that I've never forgotten, it stayed with me constantly. You'll never know. What he said was, you'll really never know what freedom is until you have lost it. I remember those words very vividly.
Something you don't forget.
That's right. So I slept most of the way to Frisco. We got into Frisco early in the morning, just after dawn, and they let me off at the airport. And of course, these other guys were going to Letterman General Hospital in Michigan, where they were restoring the POWs. And the plane took off, and here I am standing out in the middle of this airport, and I don't know which direction to go or where to go. And I see a wee little hut way on the other side of the airport. I'm in my khaki uniform, and all I've got is my little ditty bag with my shaving stuff in it. You know. So I start walking toward that, and I get over real close to it, just a few yards away from it, and out walk two Navy shore patrolmen, law enforcement. You know. They walk up to me, and one of them said to me, "Marine, you're out of uniform." Well, I was. They had changed to greens the first of that month, 1st September, and here I am in khaki. So I am out of uniform. So one got one arm, one got the other arm, and took me to that little hut. And I did have my orders with me. I was carrying my orders. So I pulled out my orders and showed it to them. And so then they called the Marine base, had a Jeep come and pick me up and take me to the Marine base where they could give me a uniform, greens. And I was there a few days. Then they changed my ticket from air to train. Put me on train. It took 5 days from Frisco to West Virginia.
You still don't know.
All I know, I'm due in Washington on October the 3rd. That's all. Yeah. So, somewhere this side of Chicago, we had changed trains at Chicago. Somewhere this side of Chicago, I'm sitting drinking a cup of coffee in a club car, and in walks this guy dressed like a Southern general. He had that great big Southern cap on or hat on that they wore, a complete Southern uniform, had a saber hanging on his side. black boots, up to his knees. So he walked up to me and said, "Do you mind if I sit with you?" No. So he sat down. And of course he began asking me questions, where I've been, where I'm going, what I'm going for, and all that. And, and where I was from. I told him West Virginia. And when I said that, he said, "You just wait here, I'll be right back." He jumped up, left. A few moments later, he came back with the conductor. Introduced me to the conductor, and the conductor was saying, "Well, you're going to Washington, yeah." He said, "Well, you know, we go pretty close to West Virginia, at Connellsville, Pennsylvania." I've never been to Connellsville. And, but he said, "We don't have a stop there. This is not a train stop." But he said, "If I slow this thing down to about 3 miles an hour, do you think you could get off of it? Because you're right close. You're just a few miles from the West Virginia border." And I said, "You betcha." I don't know what my word was, but I said, "I sure can do that." So when we got there, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm standing out on that little step on the side of the car, and he's standing behind me, and we get down to whatever speed he was supposed to get to, and he said, "Okay, get off." So I just jump off, and the train goes on, and here I am in Connellsville, Pennsylvania, 2 o'clock in the morning, don't know where I am. And so I began looking for a coffee shop. And at that time, they still had civilians patrolling the streets in the cities. And I saw one of those guys walking up the sidewalk on the other side of the street. And he had a flashlight in his hand, and he had a kind of a police-looking hat on. So I ran across the street to ask him, "Where can I get a cup of coffee?" And he told me, "Go down to the corner, make a right, and there on your left is a place where they stay open all night. It's what now is USO, but at that time it was just a military place where military people could go." So I went in there, and as soon as I sat down, one of the ladies brought me a cup of coffee and a sandwich of some kind, and began talking to me. And she said, "We don't have a bus that runs between Connellsville and Morgantown." Morgantown was the next city, closest city in West Virginia. But she said, "If you'll wait till 6 o'clock, I'll take you over in my car." Okay. So I stayed there till 6, put me in her car, took me to Morgantown, dropped me off. I caught a bus there to my hometown of Fairmont, which is only about 19 miles away. And when we take off, there were a few people on the bus, and I walked up to the driver and I said, "Can you stop this bus on the way to Fairmont and let me off?" He said, "Yeah, just tell me when, tell me where." Okay. So we're going right by my girlfriend's house that I've been engaged to ever since I went in the Marine Corps. It's about 7 o'clock in the morning by that time. He stopped the bus, I jump off and walk up and knock on the door. They don't even know I'm in the country. So her daddy had a 1957 four-door Chevrolet, ball-headed tires, because he wasn't in the war ever, so he couldn't get tires. But he told me I could have the car, I could drive the car, and go see my mother. So my girlfriend went with me, but we got in the car and drove out to see my mom, and now I'm home.
Quite a story.
It is. Then when I got ready to go to Washington, had a letter from the commandant saying that he still didn't say I was going to receive the Medal of Honor, but that I could bring somebody with me to the ceremony. I didn't know what a ceremony was. But anyway, I took my girlfriend and my mother with me on the train to Washington. And when I got to Washington on the 3rd, there were 12 other guys there, Navy guys and Marines. And that's where I learned that I'm going to receive a medal called the Medal of Honor. That don't mean a thing. That don't mean anything. Yeah. So,
Could have been the silver,
well, yeah, it could have been anything.
something,
Yeah, yeah,
silver
So-
cross, who knows?
that's right. So on the 5th, put us all on the bus, took it to the White House, and they had a ceremony outside in what now is the Rose Garden, but
Mhm.
they didn't call it that then. But that's where the ceremony took place. And that's where I really learned that I'm getting this medal, and I still don't know what it is. Medal of Honor didn't mean a thing.
Did the other recipients know?
Oh, yeah, I think some of them did. Because we had Happy Boynton and,
Really?
yeah,
Did you get to talk to him?
yeah.
Wow. Or I should say, did he get to talk to you?
Yeah, there were 13 of us. And Lou Wilson was among us. Oh, the guy that was governor of,
Boy.
head of NRA for a while. What the heck was his name? Medal of Honor recipient that was in charge of an NRA. He was a major. Name went away.
Yeah,
But anyway,
yeah. Well, I suppose we should wrap up Flamethrower. I'm trying to think, was there any, boy, we covered about everything. When did you start training on the Flamethrower? Of course, before Guam, probably on Guam you started with it? When did?
Guadalcanal. Yeah,
Yeah, we got that box with them.
yeah. Guadalcanal, we started training with them at that point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And we did quite a bit between January and June when we shipped out. We did a lot of practice.
Yeah, so you had 6 months,
Yeah, that's right.
6 months
Yeah.
of training.
And we didn't do it every day, no.
No, well,
Uh,
there's other training too.
That's right.
Yeah.
Even though we were a special weapons unit, we still had to participate in all the other functions of the company. If they were going on a march, we had to go on the march with them, you know. And if we're going out and do patrolling, then we had to go. We're still Marines,
Yeah,
yeah.
but they turned Guam into a training base, basically, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it would have made sense. All right, well, let's talk about, you want to take a short break or anything?
Yeah, better. Yeah.
All right, let's do that. Take a short break and we can get some of these flamethrowers. I can get some of these flamethrowers out of the way. All right, thank you, Woody. That was,
Well.
that waited a long time to get us together and, you know.